If you only ever learn one way to catch carp, learn this one. It is the first thing an old hand reaches for when he sits down at a new water. He casts it out tight to an island or a bit of cover, sets the rod on the rest, and before he has even finished setting up the rest of his gear, that rod tip is pulling round with the first fish of the day. No other method starts a session so fast or so surely. It is called the method feeder, and the beauty of it is that it does the hardest part for you. It hooks the fish itself. I am going to walk you through the whole thing today, plain and simple, from an empty bank to a fish in the net. There is nothing complicated here, and I will not bury you in gadgets. Just the handful of things that truly matter. The tackle you need, how to set the rig, what to feed and what to put on the hook, how to load it, where to cast it, and how to fish it so the carp keep coming. Get these basics right, and you will catch on the method feeder from your very first session. So stay with me, because I am going to give it to you in the order you will use it. Let us begin with what this thing actually is, and why it works so well, because once you see that, everything else makes sense. The method feeder is a small, flat, weighted frame that threads right onto your line. You press a little ball of feed around it, you set your hook bait right on top of that feed, and you cast the whole parcel out as one. Down it goes to the bottom, and there it sits. Slowly the feed softens and breaks away, spreading into a neat little patch on the lake bed about the size of your palm. And sitting right in the middle of it, standing proud for every fish to see, is your hook bait. And here is the clever part, the heart of the whole method. Your hook is tied on a very short link, just a couple of inches from the feeder. So when a carp moves in and sucks up that hook bait, the short line pulls tight against the weight of the feeder in a flash, and the hook is driven home before the fish knows a thing. It hooks itself. That is why the method is so deadly and so forgiving for a beginner. You are not striking at bites and missing them. The trap does the work. Now, the method loves certain waters more than others, so let me point you at the right ones. It is at its best on the kind of carp water most of us fish. The commercial lakes and ponds, especially where you can cast to a feature. An island is the classic. Carp hold tight to cover. In the shade under an overhanging tree, along the front of an island, at the edge of the reeds. Put your feeder a foot or two off that cover, and you are dropping a meal right on the fish's doorstep. It works best in shallower water, only a few feet deep, where that little patch of feed lands neat and the fish find it fast. And that is really the first lesson. The method is a tool for casting to the fish, tight to the places they live. So let us get you set up, starting with the tackle, and there is less to it than you would think. Your rod comes first, and you choose it by how far you need to cast. For most method feeder fishing, and I mean most of it, a rod of around 10 feet is perfect. It will cover you comfortably out to 30 yards or so, which is where the great majority of your fishing will be. If you need to reach further, out past 40 yards, step up to an 11-foot rod, and only for the really long chuck, 60 yards and beyond, do you need a 12-footer. But do not overreach. Most days close and accurate beats far and sloppy, and a 10-foot rod is all you will pick up. On the end of that rod goes a quiver tip, the fine, bendy top section that shows you the bite. And here is a tip worth having. Use the lightest, softest quiver tip you own. Most feeder rods come with 2 or 3 to choose from. The light one bends at the gentlest touch, and that lets you see the small, shy indications, the little pulls and the slack drop backs, that tell you a fish is over your bait and about to take. A stiff tip hides all that. A soft one shows you everything. For the reel, a middling size, what the shops call a 3 or 4,000, balances the rod nicely and holds plenty of line. And the line itself does not need to be heavy or fancy. A good sinking line of around 6 to 8 pounds is right. You want it sinking, so the wind does not catch it and drag your feeder off the spot. And you want it strong enough to take the punishment of casting a heavy feeder all day and to hold a hard, fighting carp. and fill your spool right up to the lip, because a full spool casts far and smooth, and a half empty one fights you on every cast. Now for the rig, and the modern inline feeder makes this about as easy as fishing gets. The feeder threads onto your main line, so the line runs straight through it. And you finish the bottom end with a small, quick change bead, a little fitting that lets you clip a fresh hook length on and off in a second. Onto that bead you attach your hook length. And keep that hook length short, just a couple of inches, because that shortness is the whole secret of the self-hooking method. A ready-made hook length is perfectly good here. Something around a size 12 hook with a little bait band on it to hold your bait. Simple, strong, and ready to fish. A quick word on the weight of your feeder, because I have watched many a beginner struggle by going too light. Do not use a tiny feeder. Something around 30 to 35 grams is the sweet spot for most work. That weight does two jobs. It gives you the solid resistance that sets the hook in the fish's mouth, and it punches through the wind and holds its line on a rough day. A little 20-gram feeder is fine on a flat, calm pond at close range, but the moment there is a breeze on the water, it drags and blows off your spot. Go a touch heavier than you think, and the method rewards you. One more word on the feeder, because there are two kinds, and it pays to know which to reach for. The plain feeder we have been talking about is all you need for carp, and carp are what most of us are chasing. But if you are on a water full of smaller, softer mouth fish, the F1s and the skimmers and the silvers, look for a feeder fitted with a length of elastic through the middle. That elastic acts as a shock absorber, cushioning the lunges of a small fish so the hook does not tear out of a soft lip. For big, tough carp it makes no difference, so keep it simple. But for the little fellows, an elasticated feeder puts more of them in the net. So the rig is built. Now let us feed it. And this is where I am going to keep things beautifully simple, because you do not need a bucket of exotic ground bait to catch on the method. For most sessions, one bait does the whole job. Micro pellets. The tiny 2mm pellets. That is all. Here is how you ready them. Cover them with water for no more than a minute, 60 seconds. Then drain every drop of that water straight off. Tip them into a big, wide bowl so plenty of air gets to them, and leave them to take the moisture in. In a few minutes they swell and turn tacky and bind together just right, so they hold on the feeder and then break away clean on the bottom. If they dry out on a warm day, do not soak them again. Just wet your hand. Work it through them, wet your hand, work it through again, and they come right back to that soft, tacky state. No ground bait, no mess. And if you like to add a flavor or a sweetener, because it gives you confidence, go ahead, but know that plain micros on their own will catch you plenty. Then there is the little bait on your hook, and this is where the fun and the confidence come in. You have a world of choice. A grain of corn, a maggot or two, a bit of meat, a banded pellet. But the ones I want you to know about are the bright, buoyant hook baits, the wafters, the little dumbbell baits that sit up light off the bottom instead of lying flat, and above all, color. I will tell you plainly, color matters, more than a beginner would ever guess. Bright pink, yellow, orange. That one glowing bait sitting on top of your patch of dark feed is often what makes a carp dart in and grab. So here is a rule to fish by. Start on one color and give it a fair go. But if you have made 3 or 4 casts with no fish, change the color. Do not sit stubborn on a dead bait. Ring the changes, pink to yellow to orange, and let the fish tell you what they want that day. And when one color starts catching, stay on it. And it is well worth carrying both the buoyant wafter and a plain sinking bait, because on their day one will outfish the other. And there is no telling which until you try. A wafter that lifts and dances just above the feed tempts a fish that is up and searching. A bait that lies still and flat on the bottom can be the very one a wary old carp trusts. Start with the wafter, and if the bites are shy, switch to a sinker before you change anything else. Small choices like that are what quietly fill a net. Now, how you pack that feeder can be done two ways, and each has its moment. The first way is for when you want the fish to hunt your bait out. You fill the feeder about 3/4 with your micros. You lay your bright hook bait on top, and you sprinkle a last little cap of micros over it. When that lands and breaks down, your buoyant hook bait lifts and wafts up gently out of the pile of feed, right into the fish's view. The second way is for when the fish are there in numbers, and you want an instant bite. This time the hook bait goes in first, at the bottom of the mold, and the micros pack in over the top. Now your hook bait ends up sitting on the very top of the feed when it lands. The first thing a fish sees the moment it arrives. Either way, squeeze that feeder down firm, as hard as you can, and do not worry. It will always break apart properly on the bottom. You truly cannot squeeze it too hard. So you are loaded and ready. Now comes the cast, and getting it right is what turns a good angler into a fish, catching one. So let me walk you through it slowly. First, pick your spot with care. Cast tight to the cover, a foot or two off the island or the reeds. But before you commit, cast around and feel the bottom. You want to find a clean, firm patch on the slope, not soft silt or rotting weed, because your feed shows up best on a hard, clean bottom and your bait does not get lost in the muck. If you wind back and there is weed on the hook, move along a little, left or right, up or down the slope, until you are coming back clean. That 2 minutes of searching at the start saves you a wasted afternoon. And learn to read the bottom through the rod as your feeder lands, because your fingers will feel what your eyes cannot see. A feeder coming down onto clean, hard ground sends a distinct little knock up the line. A firm tap you soon learn to recognize. Landing in soft silt or weed feels dull and mushy, with no knock at all. Cast around until you find that firm, clean tap, and fish there, because a hard, clean bottom on the slope, just off the cover, is very often the exact place the carp choose to feed. Now the cast itself. Leave 3 or 4 feet of line hanging between your rod tip and the feeder, so the feeder has room to swing and load up power. Picture a clock face beside you. You bring the rod back behind you to about 10 o'clock, and you punch it forward, letting the line go at around 1 or 2 o'clock. Driving that feeder out low and hard, so it cuts through any wind. Line up on a marker on the far bank, so you go the same way every time, and use the clip on your reel to fix your distance, so the same length of line peels off on every cast, and the feeder lands in the same place. And here is the part most folks rush and ruin. As the feeder reaches your spot and the line hits the clip, do not just let the rod drop and the feeder crash down. Keep the rod up and lower it down slow and controlled, guiding the feeder gently into the water so it lands with a soft little plop, not a great splash. Drop the rod too fast and the line springs back off the clip, and your feeder lands yards from your spot with half the feed already gone. Lower it slow and smooth, and everything lands sweet and tight, right where you want it. Do not fret about being perfect to the inch. Land within a couple of feet of your marker every time, with a soft plop, and you have done the job. The accuracy sharpens on its own the more you cast. Once it lands, set the rod down on the rest with the tip pointing out toward your spot, and use a good grippy rest. Because a carp can take the method so savagely, it will drag a rod straight off a smooth one and into the lake. On a windy day, the moment the feeder has landed, sink your rod tip right under the surface for a second, and let the line settle, because that pulls your line down out of the wind, so it cannot belly out and drag your feeder off the spot. Then lay the rod on the rest and let everything settle until the line has straightened and gone still. Now do not wind down tight to the feeder, because tightening up will drag it off your spot. Leave your tip just a little slack. It feels wrong to fish slack, but that slight slack is what lets you see the shy line bites and lets a carp pick up your bait and swim off with it before it feels any resistance. A slack tip catches you the careful fish. And here is the rhythm that ties it all together and builds your swim. and it is the true heartbeat of method feeder fishing. Cast often, especially at the start. For your first few casts, put the feeder back in every 3 minutes or so, whether you have had a bite or not, because each cast lays down another little helping of feed, and the quicker that patch of bait builds, the sooner the carp gather over it. Once the swim is going, you can ease off. For carp in warmer weather, every 5 minutes or so is about right. When it turns cold, they feed less, and you leave it longer, 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes only 3 or 4 casts in a whole hour in the depths of winter. But even then, do not leave it sitting forever. If you get a little knock, a liner. Wind in within 5 minutes and put fresh bait back down. Keep that feed going in, keep hitting the same spot, and the swim comes alive under you. And though we have talked all along about carp, know that the method feeder catches all sorts, and that changes how you fish it. On most waters you will pick up F1s, skimmers, bream, and tench in among the carp, and that is half the fun of it. If it is those smaller fish you are actually targeting rather than carp, feed faster and lighter, casting every 90 seconds to a couple of minutes to keep a busy, active swim, because they feed in a quick, greedy pack, and you must keep them competing. For the big carp, you feed slower, cast less, and play the waiting game. Match your rhythm to the fish you are after, and you will not go far wrong. Then comes the bite, and on the method it is a lovely thing to see. That slack tip will suddenly pull round and hold, or drop right back, and the fish is on, half hooked already by the weight of the feeder. When it happens, do not haul back like a madman. Lift the rod firm and smooth, and let the hook take its hold. And now, the one thing above all others when you play a carp on this gear. Keep your rod low. Never lift it high into the air. The higher you hold the rod, the deeper and harder the fish fights down and away from you. Keep the rod low off to the side, down toward the water, and you draw the fish up and in far quicker and with far more control. Let it run against a properly set clutch when it wants to. Keep the pressure steady and low, and when it rolls near the net, lift smooth and draw it over. Keep everything low and calm right to the net, and that is your fish. A word on that clutch, and on landing the better ones. Set the drag on your reel so it gives line under a hard pull before anything can break, and let it do its work when a good fish bolts for cover. Some old hands prefer to back wind, turning the handle backwards to hand outline themselves, and that is fine if you are practiced at it. But if you are not, simply trust the clutch. And never, when you reach for the net or stop to bait up, lay the rod down behind you with a loose line, because that fine tip will tangle in the slack and snap clean off. Rest it safe in front of you with the line kept tight. A broken tip ends a good day in a heartbeat. And treat that carp well when it is in. It will nearly always be neatly hooked in the bottom lip on a hair, rigged bait, and the hook slips out easy. Rest it on a wet mat. Wet your hands before you touch it, slide the hook free, and slip it back to fight another day. Then check your hook bait, straighten yourself out, and get straight back on that same spot, because where there is one carp there are usually more. Let me give you the whole of it now, said Plain, so it sits ready in your mind. Set a 10-foot rod with the lightest tip, 6 to 8 pound line filled to the lip. Build a simple inline rig with a short hook length and a feeder around 30 grams. Feed nothing but tacky micro pellets and fish a bright, buoyant hook bait, changing the color if the bites do not come. Cast tight to the cover on a clean, hard bottom, lower the rod slow for a soft landing, and leave the tip slack. Cast little and often to build the swim, and play every fish low and calm to the net. Do those things, and the method feeder will fish nearly anything you could have chosen. Now everything I have shown you today is set up for the shallow. Feature, filled waters where the method is king. But there will come a day when you sit down at a deeper, cooler water where that little patch of feed just will not draw them, and the method leaves you sitting on your hands. There is a small cousin of the method feeder, and a different way of feeding it, that turns exactly those hard, deep days into red-letter ones. That is where I will take you next. Stay with me and I will show you what it is.